Hello everyone, welcome to the presentation on how to enhance encodings for white-box designs.
In this presentation, I begin by a short introduction, followed by our proposal, and then its performances. Finally, I will finish by a conclusion. The traditional model to evaluate the security of a cryptographic algorithm is the black box model, where we have only observable input-output relationships, but lack clarity around inner workings. The only way to recover the key is to break the cipher by cryptanalysis. However, as you know, a correct implementation of a strong algorithm is not always secure. In real life, the attacker has often access to more information that may help him recover the secrets via side-channel attacks if the implementation is not protected. We could cite, for example, the execution timing of the algorithm or the power consumption of the device in which it is implemented. This is the context defined by the gray box model. Finally, in the past 20 years, an even stronger model of attacker appeared for use cases that imply an unsecure execution environment as the digital rights management, for example. In this white box model, we assume that the attacker has a total access to the executable. He can read and modify it at will. So, in that case, the implementation itself is the last line of defense against key extraction. As I said, in white box cryptography, the execution environment can be totally controlled by an attacker. And so, by extension, it is an implementation designed to resist in such an environment. And so the goal of the designer is to realize an implementation resilient to key extraction. In 2002, Shaw, Eisen, Johnson, and Van Oerschoot introduced a new way to implement cryptographic algorithms. They provide an initial solution to the problem of obfuscating a program, and for that, they use tables to perform computations. With these tables, they introduce the key concept of encodings, which hide the sensitive content of the tables. From them, numerous propositions of white box designs have been submitted in the literature. And we can note that all propositions of white box designs are theoretically broken. The current research aims at finding the best encodings and masking schemes to resist attacks. In this perspective, we suggest a new encoding scheme that can be applied to white box designs. And so our proposal comes from the observation that any Boolean function can be expressed as a logical circuit only composed of XOR and NOT gates. And so our idea is to consider a cryptographic algorithm as a logical circuit. And then we use a semi-homomorphic encryption scheme based on the addition property to securely perform bitwise operation, because with the semi-homomorphic encryption scheme we are in the cipher modem, and with the addition property we can compute logical gates. Indeed, when we add two bits, x and y, the result is the concatenation of the AND of these two bits followed by the XOR of these two bits. And when we add 1 with x, the result is this bit x followed by the inverse of this bit. We can see it in this slide with the example with 0 plus 0, 0 plus 1. So the semi-homomorphic encryption scheme is the Benaloh cryptosystem, which shows this cryptosystem where the private key is two big prime numbers, typically RSA primes, P and Q, and the public key is N, which is P times Q, and two random numbers. To encrypt message M, we just compute Y to M times U to R, modulo N. For the decryption, we just remove the quantity U to R and just keep the exponent of Y thanks to the modulo. We can see the semi-homomorphic property because when we multiply the encryption of M0 with the encryption of M1, the result is the encryption of M1 plus M0. And we want to keep this property, but we have to modify this cryptosystem to fit in white box designs. And so now the private key is two random numbers, T and Y, and the public key is a prime number P and a quantity R. And so to encrypt the message M, we just compute T times Y to M, modulo P. And for the decryption, we remove the quantity T and only keep the exponent of Y thanks to the logarithm. And we can see that when we multiply the encryption of M0 with the encryption of M1, the result is the encryption of M0 plus M1, the addition property that we wanted to keep. Now, we will use this modified cryptosystem in order to create an encoding. And the encoding function is very simple. If we want to encode a bit A, it's just the encryption of 2s plus A, with s is a random number. And so the decoding function is only the decryption of the encoding of A, which is the exponent of Y, and we remove the quantity 2 times s because we only keep the least significant bit of the exponent of Y by computing the modulo 2. And so our strategy is to encode each bit of the message. We will evaluate each gate, XOR and NOT, under the modified Benaloh encoding thanks to the addition property. We can remark that in this proposal, the parameters P, R, and Y are common to all encoded bits. Only parameters T and S can be different for all encoded bits. Now, we have to evaluate the XOR and NOT gates, and we will see how. To evaluate the XOR gates, it's simple. We just have to multiply the encoding of A with the encoding of B. Indeed, the exponents of A and B, the exponent of Y of A and B will be added. And so, with the addition property, in the least significant bit of the exponent of Y, of the new exponent of Y, we have the XOR, the XOR between A and B. So it's just a modular multiplication. And we can evaluate an arbitrary number of XOR gates just by multiplying each encoding between them. For example, the encoding of A times the encoding of B times the encoding of C, and the result will be A XOR B XOR C. We can note that for the NOT implementation, we just have to multiply the encoding of A by an encoding of 1. So now we can compute the NOT implementation and the XOR implementation. For the end, it's a bit tricky. And then we need tables and we need right shift tables. Indeed, we will right shift the encoding of A, the encoding of B, and the encoding of A times the encoding of B. Indeed, we can see the result. We remove with the right shifting the encoding of A, we only keep the quantity S prime for B, and S plus S prime plus AB, A and B, with the encoding of A times the encoding of B. And when we multiply all these three encodings, thanks again to the addition property, we only have the encoding of A and B. Indeed, the quantity S and S prime are deleted, thanks to the XOR of the addition. So all this table will decrypt the encoding, right shift, and re-encrypt it. And so we have P times log 2 to P bits in these tables. We can remark that for the NOT implementation, we do not need to compute to have a computer calculation. Indeed, we just have to remember that we wanted to compute a NOT, to have a NOT, and in the next table, in the first table meeting, we just have to take into account in the tables. And so the tables will compute a NOT and redshift. So now we can evaluate a function designed with elementary gates under our modified cryptosystem. So if we consider a cryptographic algorithm as a logical circuit which gates are modified Benaloh encoded, we can evaluate it in the cipher model for the whole execution. And in the next, we take a short example to see the performances of our proposal. With the AES. Indeed, the AES can be written with only elementary gates, XOR and not XOR. We have seen that for the XOR, it's only modular multiplications. And so only CPU operations. And so we have no tables for the XOR. For the NOT, it's the same. We delegate this operation to the next AND table. And for the AND operations, we need around 15,000 tables because we have 32 ANDs for each S-box, 10 rounds in the AES 128, 16 input bytes, and 3 tables for each gate. But we have additional tables also. For the secret key, they must be encoded in a Benaloh form. And we have to encode the plain text and decode the ciphertext for each bit. And we can remark that the execution time is always the same. Indeed, whatever the size of P, which is around 15,000 table accesses and around 30,000 XOR gates to evaluate, and so only 30,000 modular multiplications. Only the memory consumption, of course, need is according to P. If you want to compare our solution with others, we can see that for the size of our proposal, we are competitive with other white-box designs. In this example, we chose a 6-bit prime number for P, which is 53, a processor of 2 GHz, and an access runtime equivalent to a DDR3 memory. And so for the execution time, we can remark that some of proposals are faster than ours. We can remark that our design can be easily adapted to a mask implementation. And we chose this 6-bit prime number because taking a bigger P, prime P, do not significantly weaken our white box compared to longer primes. Why? It allows a competitive memory footprint. As a conclusion, we suggest a new encoding scheme based on the Benaloh cryptosystem. We keep the semi-homomorphic property of the original scheme to drop tables for the XOR operations. And in the paper, we provide a security analysis of our proposal, and we can just say that the security can be increased by choosing a higher P. And for the perspectives, we will try to improve memory consumption of the end tables. In the same way, we try to enhance the speed, for example, by parallelizing multiplications and studying other homomorphic encryption schemes. And why not fully homomorphic encryption scheme? Thank you for your attention. If you have questions,